The salt trail began at the door jamb, a line of wet crystals that glistened under the flickering fluorescent light. Each grain clicked softly as I stepped forward, the sound like tiny ice shards grinding against concrete. My breath fogged in the chill air of the empty hallway, but the salt was warm. I crouched, pressing a finger to the trail. It felt like damp sand mixed with blood. The wetness seeped into my skin, cold despite the unnatural heat clinging to the school's forgotten corridors. A low, rhythmic thoof. Thoot from the ceiling above like something heavy, dragging itself across the ceiling tiles. I ignored it. The salt was the only thing that mattered. I checked the science locker. It stood open, its metal interior rusted and empty. No salt shakers, no forgotten experiments. Just dust motes dancing in the weak light, disturbed by my presence. The locker door groaned as I pulled it shut, the sound sharp and final in the silence. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic counterpoint to the quiet. The flies buzzed inside my ear canal, a disassembled clockwork of sound that made my teeth ache. I rubbed my ear, the flies vibrating against my eardrum, a sensation like needles pricking the raw nerve. I turned toward the hallway mirror. It was cracked, a jagged spiderweb spreading from the top corner. My reflection stared back pale, eyes wide with a dread that felt older than my time in prison. The mirror showed the salt trail ending at my feet, a line of wet crystals leading away from my dorm door. I'd been here before. This was the same pattern as the night they found me in the storage room, the night I'd almost killed someone. The memory was a physical weight in my chest, heavy as a lead weight. The Siamese cat entered the hallway, its movements silent on the linoleum floor. Its fur was a deep, unnatural blue, and its mouth was fixed in a permanent human-like grin. The cat's eyes were yellow like old coins. It padded toward me, its tail held high. The smell of wet fur and something metallic like old blood filled the air. The cat pressed its muzzle against my throat, cold and wet. Its grin widened, stretching the skin unnaturally. I tried to pull back, but my legs were frozen. The cat's breath was hot against my neck, a damp, sour smell. The flies in my ear grew louder, buzzing faster, a frantic rhythm that matched the panic in my chest. I couldn't breathe. The air vanished from my lungs, sucked out by the cat's breath. My vision tunneled, the hallway lights flickering in time with the flies. The salt trail glowed faintly on the floor, each crystal reflecting the dim light like tiny wet mirrors. The cat's breath left a wet imprint on my neck, a perfect circle of dampness. My own breath was gone. I felt the last of it vanish, the final gasp dissolving into the cat's grin. The flies buzzed inside my ear, the sound now a single steady hum. The wet dragging sound from the ceiling above grew louder, closer. The salt trail on the floor seemed to pulse, each grain glowing faintly in the dim light. I could no longer feel my own pulse. The cat's grin never wavered. The reflection in the mirror showed only my neck, wet and pale, the salt crystals glistening like tiny wet jewels. The flies buzzed inside my ear, the sound now a single steady hum. The dragging sound from the ceiling grew louder, closer. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. The cat's breath left a wet imprint on my neck, a perfect circle of dampness. My own breath was gone. The salt clung to the plastic of the whistle, a slick, granular coating. It wasn't the coarse salt of a shaker, but something finer, almost powdery like dust ground from bone. I turned it over in my fingers, the plastic cool against the unnatural warmth radiating from the hallway. The shape was crude, a tooth, or perhaps a fragment of a jawbone, molded into a simple air passage. I brought it to my lips, hesitant. The air tasted of nothing then, as I blew, a high-pitched keening slice through the silence. It wasn't a clear note, but a fractured sound, like glass grinding against glass. Immediately the dragging started again. Not a scrape, not a shuffle, but something heavier. The ceiling tiles above weren't shifting, not visibly, but the sound. It was the weight of something immense pulling itself across the suspended grid. A slow, deliberate drag, stone against stone, or perhaps something less solid. It resonated in my teeth, a vibration that settled deep within my skull. The fluorescent lights above flickered, spitting static into the stale air. I glanced at the mirror, the cracked surface reflecting the hallway, and something else. Or rather, Twemmy reflecting something else. The whistle slipped from my numb fingers, clattering onto the linoleum. My reflection wasn't my own. It was me. Yes, the same hollows under the eyes, the same gauntness of the jaw, but overlaid with something ancient, a golden mask, intricately carved, covering my face. The style wasn't Roman or Greek, but something older, more severe. The elongated features, the heavy brow, the stylized beard. It was unmistakably Egyptian, a funerary mask, the kind they placed on the dead in the Valley of the Kings. The cat hadn't moved. It sat, a blue statue, watching me, or rather, watching the reflection. Its grin hadn't lessened, hadn't faltered. It was a permanent fixture, stretched across its muzzle, revealing not teeth but the suggestion of something else, something waiting. The air grew warmer, a dry, stifling heat that prickled my skin. It wasn't a natural warmth, but a focused heat, as if a spotlight was trained on me. I tried to focus on the salt, the trail leading from the door, but my gaze kept returning to the mirror, to the mask. It wasn't a perfect overlay. The edges blurred, the gold seeming to seep into my skin to merge with my flesh. I blinked, trying to clear my vision, but the mask remained solid, immutable. It wasn't a reflection of my face, but a replacement, a new face, staring back at me. The dragging above intensified, the sound now accompanied by a low, wet sigh. It wasn't the sound of air escaping, but of something shifting, compressing, as if the ceiling itself was breathing. Dust motes danced in the light, swirling in a chaotic ballet disturbed by the vibrations. I could feel the floor beneath my feet begin to tremble, a subtle tremor that ran up my legs. My hand reached up, instinctively, to touch my face, to feel for the cold metal of the mask, but my fingers met only skin warm, damp skin. The reflection's mask, however, remained, and as I stared, transfixed, the lips of the golden face parted. Not in the mirror, not on the mask, but from the ceiling. A whisper, thin and reedy, like the wind whistling through papyrus reeds. It wasn't a voice, not exactly. More a resonance, a vibration that bypassed my ears and settled directly into my bones. Daniel Vane. The sound wasn't directed at me or even treaty me. It was a statement, a recognition, the name, spoken in a language I didn't understand yet somehow knew. It resonated with a deep, buried part of my memory. A memory I hadn't realized existed. The cat's grin widened impossibly, and the dragging from the ceiling became a rhythmic pulse, a slow, deliberate beat. My own name, whispered from above, from the darkness, from the weight of something unseen. I stepped out into the courtyard, the salt trail leading me like breadcrumbs through an unfamiliar world. The red sandstorm from earlier had abated, leaving behind a desert's footprint on the school grounds. It was desolate winter here too, the bleak trees stretching towards the sky like skeletal hands clawing for warmth. The grains of sand struck my skin like metallic kisses, sharp and stinging. Each impact resonated with an almost audible ping, as if tiny hammers were pummeling me into submission. The wind whipped around, a copper, tasting beast that howled through empty windows and echoed off cold stone walls. I followed the salt trail across the courtyard, each step leaving behind a wet print in the sand. It was like walking on the edge of a mirror, my reflection shattered beneath me. The school loomed ahead, its once pristine facade, now marred by time, his relentless march and nature, his indifferent touch. The red bricks seemed to bleed into the white stone trim, as if the building itself was weeping blood. The trail led me to the base of a large oak tree, one of the few survivors of the sandstorm. Its branches were bare, save for a single decaying Siamese cat collar hanging from the lowest bough like some morbid fruit. The bell jangled softly as it swayed in the wind, a sound that seemed too cheerful for this forsaken place. I reached up to take down the collar, but hesitated when I noticed something peculiar about its design. Instead of the usual simple clasp or buckle, there was an intricate carving etched into the metal. It matched those on the whistle and the floor tiles. Ancient Egyptian motifs, delicate lines that seemed out of place in this modern world. As my fingers closed around it, ready to pluck it down, something changed. The air grew warmer by 2 degrees exactly, as if a hidden thermostat had been adjusted. I felt it like a physical weight settling on my shoulders, the heat prickling my skin and raising goosebumps despite myself. It was an oppressive warmth that promised not comfort but discomfort. The bell chimed again, louder this time, resonating in the sudden silence of the courtyard. The wind had ceased its howling, the sand grains no longer pinging against my flesh. Everything held still, waiting for what? For me. I glanced back towards the school building, towards the door I'd come through just moments ago. It was closed now, shut tight despite there being no breeze to slam it shut. The glass pane in its center seemed to stare at me like a blind eye. The cat collar hung heavy in my hand, another piece of this puzzle that didn't quite fit together yet. But I knew one thing for certain. Whatever force was behind these whispers and heat waves, it wanted something from me. and as much as every fibre screamed against it, I could help but be drawn deeper into its web. Word count 897. The UV light sputtered, a sickly violet bloom in the gloom of the pocket mirror. I held the whistle closer, angling it to catch the beam. The copper residue wasn't simply a discoloration, it was patterned. Microscopic etchings too fine to see with the naked eye flared under the light. They weren't random. They formed shapes, not glyphs I recognized, not Egyptian, not anything I'd encountered in the archives, but undeniably deliberate. A language pressed into the metal, whispering secrets only the light could coax out. A swarm materialized within the violet glow. Not outside the beam, but to inside it a dense, buzzing cloud of flies, impossibly contained within the small circle of light. They didn't fly, didn't crawl, simply existed as a shifting, black mass. The air thickened, not with scent, but with the frantic, almost palpable vibration of their wings. A low drone, like a failing transformer, rose from the cluster, a sound that resonated in my teeth. Each tiny body, a miniature engine of decay. My fingers traced the whistle's form, the cool metal a strange counterpoint to the rising heat I'd felt earlier. The heat wasn't external, wasn't radiating from the object, but building front within me, a pressure behind my eyes, a flush creeping up my neck. I needed to know what this thing was, what it meant, what TT meant. The amnesia was a constant drag, a lead weight in the current of my thoughts. Fragments surfaced, then dissolved like ash in water, faces without names, places I couldn't anchor to reality. The mirror, I hadn't truly looked in it since I woke up in this place. I tilted the light, directing the violet beam onto my reflection. It wasn't a clear image. The glass was clouded, as if filmed with a fine layer of dust, despite being polished clean just hours ago. I blinked, rubbed at the surface with my sleeve. No use. The clouding remained, obscuring my features. I leaned closer, squinting, and then it resolved. Not my face, not entirely. The shape was right, the angles familiar, but the details wrong, sharper somehow. The lines around my eyes were deeper, more pronounced, the set of my jaw harder, more determined, the eyes themselves a shade darker, colder, a name unbidden formed in my mind. Daniel Vane. The name tasted of something metallic, of old pennies and dust. It felt correct, but also stolen, like a name I'd worn before, then lost, only to have it handed back, slightly tarnished. The buzzing intensified, the swarm within the light writhing. I could almost feel the brush of their legs against my skin, the phantom tickle of their wings. The heat flared, a wave washing over me. I stumbled back, knocking over a stack of discarded textbooks. They landed with a muffled thud, the sound swallowed by the drone of the flies. I forced my gaze back to the mirror. The reflection wasn't changing, wasn't distorting, it was clarifying, the details sharpening, solidifying. Daniel Vane stared back at me, a ghost in the glass, a ghost with my eyes. Then the ceiling shifted. Not visually, not at first. A subtle change in pressure, a prickling on the back of my neck. The air grew warmer, heavier. The sound of the flies reached a fever pitch, a high-pitched whine that threatened to shatter the glass. And then the cat. It wasn't a descent, not a fall. It moved with an impossible fluidity, a ripple in the air. One moment the ceiling was empty. The next, the Siamese was there, suspended, its blue eyes locked on mine. It wasn't leaping, it was twin becoming part of the ceiling, peeling away from the plaster like a dark, furry shadow. The permanent grin stretched wider, revealing teeth that seemed too long, too sharp. It dropped, not down. The gravity had changed. Or rather, it had fully rotated toward. The cat wasn't falling. It was twisted ways, claws extended, raked across my neck, the impact like icy fire. Not a tearing, rending pain, but a precise surgical incision. The heat, the flies, the name, everything coalesced in a blinding flash of agony. I didn't scream. I didn't have time. The room was now the wall, the floor, the ceiling. The cat, a dark weight, clung to me, a purring parasite. The last thing I felt before the darkness consumed me was the wet warmth spreading across my skin. The thread is too thick, too stiff, like the gut strings from old fishing nets. I cut it with the scissors from the biology lab, the blade snapping shut with a sound like teeth. The cut ends fray, a fine white fluff catching the dim light from the single bulb above the locker. The locker door hangs open, its interior a hollow maw of forgotten things, a rusted trophy, a gym sock still in its plastic wrapper, a half-chewed apple core that smells like the inside of a grave. The thread burns my fingers, not with heat but with the memory of it. The way it used to bite into my skin when I was younger, when the pain meant something. The wound is clean. Too clean. The edges don't bleed like they should, not after what the cat did. The incision runs along my neck, precise as a surgeon's scalpel. But the pain isn't right either. It's not the sharp, white-hot sting of a fresh cut. It's deeper, a dull throb that pulses in time with something else, something that isn't inside me, but outside pressing in. The dragging sound is still there. It's not just in my ears anymore. It's in my bones, a wet, rasping scrape, like a tongue dragging across the underside of a table or a finger tracing the grooves of an old record. It's inside my skull, vibrating against the back of my teeth. I can feel it in the base of my throat, a pressure building like I'm holding my breath underwater. The sandstorm outside the windows of the high school isn't helping. It's not just the howl of the wind anymore. It's the sound of dice tumbling across a wooden surface, rolling, stopping, rolling again. The grains outside are the wrong color. They're not beige or gold, but a sickly, ashen white, like the powder left behind after a fire. I tie the knot, the thread pulling tight, the knot slipping once, twice before it holds. The knot isn't neat. It's lopsided, the way I used to tie my shoes when I was a kid before I learned how to do it properly. The knot is wrong. The mirror is across the room, its surface clouded with the same ashen dust that coats everything now. I don't look at it. I don't want to see the reflection again, not yet. Not until I'm sure the knot will hold. The knot is all that's keeping me from unraveling. The dragging sound shifts. It's not just inside my head anymore. It's coming from the ceiling, not from above, from put within the ceiling. A slow, deliberate scrape, like a nail being dragged across the underside of a coffin lid. The plaster is old, brittle. The high school was built in the 50s, back when they still cared about things like solid construction. The ceiling tiles are yellowed, the paint peeling in long curved strips, like the bark of a dead tree. The sound is closer now, closer and wetter, like something is dissolving the plaster from the inside out. I don't turn around. I don't breathe. The knot holds. The dragging stops. And then the reflection smiles. It's not me. It's not to Daniel. The face in the mirror is too smooth, too perfect. The lines around the eyes too deep. The mouth too wide. The smile isn't human. It's the same grin the cat had. The one that split its face in half. The one that made its teeth look too long, too sharp. The reflection's eyes are blue, but they're not mine. They're the color of ice, of frozen lakes in the dead of winter, of the sky just before a storm. The reflection blinks. And then it winks. The wink isn't a gesture. It's a promise. The knot is still holding, but the thread is slipping. The knot is slipping. The knot is the mirror clears, not all at once, not with a snap or a crack. It clears slowly, like water evaporating from a surface, like the last of the mist burning off a field at dawn. The reflection is gone. The glass is clear. The ashen dust is gone, and the knot is still holding, but the thread isn't mine anymore. It's his. The concrete hums beneath my fingers. Not the solid thrum of stone, but something softer, like kneading dough left too long in the sun. The high school wall is slick with the same ashen dust that coats everything now, clinging to my palms in fine, gritty trails. I pull myself up, the old brickwork groaning beneath my weight. The mortar crumbling in my grip like stale bread. The school looms behind me, its windows dark and jagged, the glass cracked in spiderwebs of frost that don't match the desert heat outside. The sandstorm howls, but it's not the wind I hear anymore. It's the sound of the wall itself, the plaster flexing, the seams of the building shifting like a living thing breathing. I don't think. I don't remember how to think. The knot in my throat pulses. The thread still burning my fingers, not with fire but with the memory of the cat's teeth hot, wet the way it bit down on my breath, stealing it like a coin from a pocket. I swallow, and the air sticks in my lungs, thick as syrup. The reflection in the shattered glass isn't mine. It's the grinning face of the thing that took it. The Siamese with eyes too blue, too knowing its fur the color of old bruises. The climb is wrong. The muscles in my arms don't ache like they should. They're light, almost weightless, as if I'm not pulling myself up but letting myself sink into the wall. The bricks don't resist, they give. The way wax softens under a flame. My boots scrape against the surface, the sound not of rubber on stone, but of a finger dragging across a dry, cracked tongue. The wall is warm now, too warm, the heat seeping through my gloves like a slow, wet breath. I reach the ledge, the roof is gone, not destroyed, not collapsed, just shifted. The angle is wrong. The sky isn't above me anymore. It's to my left, a vast, bruised expanse of red dust swirling under a sun that shouldn't be there. Too bright, too close, hanging like a wound in the ceiling. The school is still there, but it's upside down. The windows staring up at me like hollow eyes. The doors hanging open as if waiting for something to crawl out. The ceiling. Wimmy floor is a grid of yellowed tiles, the paint peeling in strips, the seams between them dark with something that looks like old blood. I don't fall, I don't drop. I'm already falling, but it's not down. It's sideways, my body sliding along the new angle of the world, the ashen dust puffing up around me like a slow-motion explosion. The sound isn't a crash. It's a groan, a deep, wet tearing like the wall itself is being unzipped. The flies come first, thousands of them, black and bloated, their wings beating against the inverted ceiling in a sound like a swarm of tiny hands slapping glass. They don't buzz, they whisper, a chorus of voices too soft to make out. Just the hum of something ancient, something hungry. I hit the wall, or the wall hits me. The impact isn't pain, it's pressure. The way a hand presses against the inside of a drum. My back slams into the surface, the air rushing out of my lungs in a rush of heat. The taste of copper and something older, something like the inside of a tomb. The flies scatter, their bodies pressing against my skin, their legs like tiny, trembling needles. I push off, my fingers leaving smudges in the dust. The wall still warm, still breathing. The ceiling, the floor is a mirror now. Not the clouded glass from before, but clear, too clear, the way a pond reflects the sky before the ripples come. My reflection isn't there, not at first. Just the flies, their black bodies clustered in the glass like ink spilled across a page. Then a face, not mine. Not the Daniel I remember, not the one who tied the knot, not the one who climbed the wall. This face is smooth, too smooth, the skin stretched tight over the bones, the eyes too wide, too blue, the grin too sharp, too knowing, it blinks, and the reflection winks. The wink isn't a gesture, it's a promise. I don't move, I can't. The knot in my throat is still there, the thread still burning, but it's not mine anymore, the thread is his. The grin is his. The breath I'm holding isn't mine either, it's the cat's hot and wet and too deep, filling my lungs like a tide. My body shifts again, not falling, not sliding, but bifurcating, the world tilting beneath me, the wall becoming the ceiling becoming the floor, the mirror becoming a window, the window becoming a door, the door becoming a mouth. The flies press against the glass, their bodies dissolving into the reflection, their whispers merging into a single voice, a sound like dice rolling across wood, a sound like teeth clicking, a sound like the knot slips, and I'm falling. Not down, not up, but into the mirror, into the grin, into the blue eyes, into the breath that isn't mine, into the thread that burns, into the wall that groans, into the ceiling that dissolves, into the sky that isn't a sky, into the sandstorm that isn't sand, into the knot that unravels, into the reflection that winks, into the world shifts again. And I'm looking up, not at the ceiling, at the floor, at the mirror, at Fimpy, upside down, staring back. The ceiling is a wound. I press my palm against it. The tiles are slick, not with dust, but with something slicker, something that sticks to my fingers like the residue of a bad dream. The salt trail winds upward in a jagged line, glistening under the inverted light that bleeds through the shattered windows. The red sandstorm has settled into the corners, but the air still tastes of it, of rust and something older, like the inside of a coffin that's been left in the sun. The cat is ahead of me, its tail flicking in a rhythm that doesn't match its steps. It moves sideways, its paws skittering along the wall like a spider learning the edges of a web. The grin on its face is wider now, the blue eyes too bright, reflecting the light that isn't light but something sharper, something that cuts. The flies press against the underside of the tiles, their bodies a living stain. They don't scatter when I move, they shifty, their wings beating in slow, deliberate pulses, the sound like 1,000 fingers dragging across wet parchment. The air hums with it, a low, wet thrum that vibrates in my teeth. I swallow, and the knot in my throat tightens, the thread burning like a brand. The cat stops. Its ears twitch, the tips black as fresh ink. It doesn't look at me. It looks through me, past the wall, past the ceiling, past the sky that isn't there anymore. The breath comes before the sound. It's not a gust. It's not wind. It's the sound of something inhaling, a slow, wet drag of air that doesn't belong in this upside-down world. The tiles above me shudder. The flies surge. their bodies pressing harder against the glass, their whispers rising into a chorus that isn't words, but something closer to the scrape of a blade against bone. The salt trail leads to a door. No, not a door, a fin mouth. The wood is warped, the grain twisted into something that looks like teeth, the hinges creaking like joints bending the wrong way. The cat's tail lashes. It doesn't meow. It twee-laughs, a sound like dice rolling across a table, each click a syllable, each syllable a name I can't remember. I step toward it. The floor, the wall is warm, too warm. The heat seeps through my boots, through my gloves, through the fabric of my shirt, burning the skin like a brand. The cat's fur is the color of old bruises, the blue of its eyes the same shade as the sky before a storm, before the sandstorm, before the world turned itself inside out. Its grin widens. The teeth are too white, too sharp. The gums too pink, too wet. It's not a cat anymore. It's not an animal. It's a door, a mouth, a reflection that moves when I don't. The breath is closer now. It's not coming from the door. It's not coming from the ceiling. It's coming from Fundi behind me. The air shifts. The flies scatter, their bodies dissolving into the tiles, their whispers merging into a single wet rasp. The salt trail ends at a vent, the metal rusted, the edges jagged like teeth. I don't look back. I don't breathe. The cat is still there, its tail flicking, its grin too wide, its eyes too blue. It's not guiding me, it's herding me. The breath is on my neck, a hot, wet exhalation, the sound of a lung filling with something that isn't air. The heat presses against my skin, the tiles groaning beneath my weight, the wall flexing like living flesh. The vent opens, not with a hinge, not with a screw, with a tear, the metal splitting like skin, the edges curling back to reveal darkness that isn't dark, but something older. The sound isn't a whisper. It's a voice, a chorus of voices, a sound like teeth clicking, like dice rolling, like the cat's tail flicks against my ankle. I jump. The breath is in my ear now, a hot, wet sigh that isn't mine. The tiles shift, the wall shifts, the ceiling shifts. The world tilts again, not sideways, not upside down, but diving to itself, the edges folding in like a map of a place that doesn't exist. The salt trail dissolves into the vent, the flies pressing against the glass, their bodies dissolving into the reflection that isn't there. The cat's grin widens, its eyes blink, and the breath is mine. It fills my lungs, hot and wet and too deep. The taste of copper and something older, something like the inside of a tomb. The knot in my throat burns, the thread slips, the cat's tail flicks, and I hear it. The sound isn't a breath, it's a laugh. It's a promise, it's a name, and it's near. I follow the salt trail downwards into the belly of the school. It is not just wet now. It glistens like tears under the harsh fluorescence, each grain a tiny mirror reflecting my distorted face back at me. The cat leads on, its tail flicking against the lockers with a rhythmic metallic rasp that echoes through the empty halls, the sound of dice rolling across a wooden table. The air grows thicker as we descend. It is not just the heat, it is the weight of something else, something older than the school, older even than the city above us. The red sandstorm has followed me down here, its whispers echoing through the vents like an ancient language I almost understand, but can't quite grasp. The cat stops at a door that shouldn't exist in this utilitarian basement, an ornate affair with carvings of pharaohs and gods, their stone eyes watching us from beneath dusty lashes. The hinges creak open to reveal not the expected darkness, but a dim light, like the glow of embers before they die. The room beyond is a replica of something ancient, the Valley of the Kings, or so it seems at first glance. But this valley is confined within four walls, its tombs replaced by towering shelves filled with forgotten yearbooks and yellow textbooks. The air tastes of dust and something else, an underlying tang that is familiar yet foreign. I step inside, my boots sinking into the carpet that is not quite carpet, but some sort of coarse fabric, like sackcloth or shroud cloth. Each footfall leaves a wet print behind me, as if I'm walking on damp earth instead of man-made fibers. The cat moves ahead, its tail flicking against the shelves with that same dice roll sound. The whispers follow us in here too, the sandstorm's voice echoing through these tomb-like aisles. It grows louder as we move deeper into this false valley until it is not just echoes anymore, but something else entirely, a chorus of voices whispering in ancient tongues, their words lost to time yet somehow familiar on my tongue. I see now why the cat led me here, to listen for myself what lies beneath these whispers, what waits behind them. I press against one shelf, then another, They're not filled with books, but something else entirely. Bones wrapped in cloth like macabre mummies. Their eye sockets empty and staring right through me. The heat intensifies, the air growing denser, heavier, as if the very atmosphere is alive and breathing down my neck. My skin prickles under its scrutiny. Each pore feels stretched wide open by unseen hands eager to peel away layers of flesh until they reach bone itself. And then I hear it. Not behind one shelf, but all around me. A breath drawn deep into lungs that aren't mine. A sigh expelled from lips that don't exist in this reality. It is the sound of something ancient waking up after centuries asleep. It's the sound of time turning back on itself like some cosmic hourglass running out of sand. The cat turns to face me now, not with its usual grin, but eyes wide open and staring, reflecting not light from above, but a dark glow emanating from within this false valley. Its tail flicks once more against my ankle, a warning or invitation. I don't know anymore because everything has shifted. The gravity pulling at my insides like it wants to turn me inside out too. And then the breath is on my neck again, hot and wet and heavy with promises whispered in languages long dead but now alive once more. The cat's grin widens, a reflection of mine perhaps. Because suddenly I can't tell where one ends and another begins anymore. The line between us blurred by heat and sandstorm whispers that aren't just echoes now, but something far older, far darker. But what does it want with me? That thought hangs heavy in the air like smoke from an ancient fire, thickening around us until there is no escape save through whatever lies ahead. And so I follow the cat, leading on into darkness deeper still, while behind us tombs whisper secrets only we can hear now. Their voices growing louder as our shadows stretch long across these false valley walls. The heat intensified. A tangible wave rolling off the shelves. Not just warmth, but a dry, suffocating pressure against my skin. It wasn't the heat of a furnace, but something biological, like standing too close to a reptile basking in the sun. The cat, perched atop a stack of yearbooks from the 1950s, seemed to trendy Bichet, the source. Its grin widened, a predatory curve in the dim crimson glow that now bathed the false valley. The entire room pulsed with a sickly internal light, the bones wrapped in cloth, seeming to absorb and emit it. The sandstorm whispers intensified, coalescing into something almost intelligible, a chorus of voices that felt less like echoes and more like breathing. My breath hitched, a dry rasp in my throat. The air tasted of something acrid, like burnt sugar and something else. Something metallic, like old blood. I swallowed, trying to dislodge the taste, but it clung to the back of my tongue. The cat tilted its head, its eyes reflecting the crimson light, and I realized with a sickening lurch that the glow wasn't emanating from the room, but from within. Its eyes, they weren't the amber of a cat anymore. They were pools of molten light, reflecting a landscape I didn't understand, a landscape of shifting sands and crumbling stone. The heat wasn't just oppressive, it was so targeted, it pressed against my face, my neck, my chest, as if the air itself were trying to suffocate me. I could feel the sweat beading on my forehead, trickling down my temples. My clothes clung to my skin, heavy and damp. The air moved, not in a breeze but in a viscous, almost tangible wave like looking through heat rising off asphalt on a summer day. Whir, 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 whir. Asterisk, a sound like 1,000 tiny wings beating in unison, a swarm of flies buzzing just beyond the threshold of hearing. What is it? I asked, the words a croak. My voice sounded far and distant, as if filtered through layers of sediment. The cat didn't respond, its grin unwavering. It simply stared, those molten eyes boring into me, dissecting me. The bones on the shelves seemed to shift in the crimson light, their empty sockets seeming to follow my every move. A wet, dragging sound emanated from above, a slithering scrape against stone, too low to be identifiable, but undeniably foitherai. It wasn't an echo, it was present. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the oppressive silence. I reached out, my hand trembling, and touched one of the wrapped bones. The cloth felt damp, strangely warm to the touch. It smelled of dust and something else, something ancient and indefinable, like the scent of a tomb disturbed after centuries of slumber. The cat let out a soft guttural sound, a rumble deep in its chest that resonated through the floor. It wasn't a purr, it was something else, something expectant. The crimson glow intensified, bathing the room in a hellish light. The whispers escalated, resolving themselves into fragmented phrases, syllables of a language I could understand, yet somehow knew. They pressed against my mind, a relentless tide of sound threatening to drown out my thoughts. Then I understood. The heat wasn't just heat. It was the cat's breath. It was Futintitrescence. The air thickening wasn't just air. It was the exhalation of something ancient, something monstrous. The cat wasn't he leading me. It was Tuni summoning. Me, a wave of nausea washed over me. I stumbled back, knocking against a shelf, sending a cascade of yellowed textbooks tumbling to the floor. The sound was jarring, a brief interruption in the oppressive silence. The cat's grin widened further, a reflection of something shifting within me. I felt a pull, a tugging sensation deep within my chest, as if a part of me were being drawn towards the cat, towards the crimson glow. The breath was on my neck again, hot and wet and heavy. It smelled of dust and decay, of ancient tombs and forgotten gods. It felt familiar. Terribly, unsettlingly familiar. I could almost taste it, a coppery tang on my tongue. It wasn't just a breath. It was a memory not my own, but woven into my very being. The cat's grin was no longer just a grin. It was a mirror. A reflection of something twisted and broken within myself. I looked into its eyes, and I saw not the eyes of a cat, but a swirling vortex of crimson light, a gateway to something other, a place beyond understanding, beyond sanity. A place where the past wasn't just remembered, it was fear, a lived deed. The heat intensified, the air thickening until it felt like I was drowning in a sea of crimson light. The whispers coalesced into a single clear voice, a voice that resonated not in my ears, but within my skull. Asterisk, welcome home, Daniel. Asterisk. I pull the tooth whistle from my pocket. It's cold, slick with something that isn't saliva or rain. I press it to my lips and blow. Not a sound, not a note, just a wet, gurgling sigh that echoes the dragging scrape from the ceiling above. Slap, slap. The air thickens, clogging my throat like wet sand. The whispers in the valley, those sandstorm murmurs, suddenly aren't whispers anymore. They're a chorus of voices, all layered over the sound of the cat's breath, that viscous, suffocating exhalation I've felt on my neck for hours. Hiss. Not just the cat breathing, it's the room breathing, the walls breathing. The fortu, the shelves and the shelves breathing. I feel the vibration in my teeth, a subsonic thrumming through the floorboards. The Siamese cat on the yearbooks lifts its head, its grin unwavering. The molten eyes reflect the crimson light, but now they're not just reflecting, we're merging. The light from the cat's eyes, the light from the whispers, the light from the cat's grin. It all coils into one. It's not a light, it's a vikresha. A weight pressing down on my chest, my ribs, my lungs. I can't breathe. I try to pull away, but the air itself holds me. The cat's grin stretches wider. Not a smile. A tear in the fabric of whatever I thought was real. Rip. It's not just the cat's face. It's my face. I feel it. The same heat, the same wet dragging sound from the ceiling now in my own throat. Slap. The cat lets out a single, wet, fuftufty, a sound like a bubble bursting in a swamp. The light in its eyes flares, and for a second I see my own eyes staring back, pupils dilated, pupils black as obsidian, reflecting the crimson glow. The whispers stop. The air goes silent, not empty, full of something I can't name but recognize as mine. The heat intensifies, a wave rolling off the cat, off the bones, off the Sridwalju, off Twin Mime. I feel the sweat on my neck, the dampness on my chest, the sticky residue of the salt trail I found leading to my bedroom door. The cat's grin is no longer a grin, it's a wound, and it's stretching across my face. Stretch! The whispers coalesce into a single clear phrase inside my skull, not in my ears, but in the marrow of my bones. Welcome home, Daniel. My breath hitches, a dry rasp. Then I realize. The breath I've been feeling on my neck. The one that smelled of dust and decay. The one that tasted like old blood on my tongue. It's mine. It's not the cat's. It's not the stalker's. It's the mean. It's been mine all along. I've been breathing it. The cat's grin widens, the edges of its mouth pulling back like skin splitting. Rip. The room pulses with the heat of my own exhalation. The crimson light flares and I see it. The cat's eyes aren't reflecting me. They're holding me. And the whispers aren't coming from the valley. They're coming from pointed inside me. The tooth whistle in my hand feels warm, wet, and alive. I blow again. Fizzlup, slap. The sound is mine, the light is mine, the heat is mine. And the cat's grin is stretching wider, 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 like a wound in the shape of my own face. Rip, 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 rip. The air is thick with my own breath. The cat's grin is my own, and the whispers are no longer coming from the valley. They're coming from the ceiling, from the floor, from the bones on the shelves, from Twin Mai. Slap, slap, slap. The stalker's breath is Daniel's own, returning.